Hello. First of all, thanks a lot for sticking it out in a windowless room when you really ought to be eating Pret in the park right now. So I appreciate it. I'm Duncan. I am a designer at TransferWise. And for those of you that are not familiar, TransferWise is a thing that helps people around the world to keep hold of as much of their hard-earned money as possible when they send it across borders. And then more recently, also when they receive money from other countries and when they spend it in other countries. So most of us are here because a lot of change has happened over the last decade or so. We had a meltdown, a crisis in the banking industry, which has given people an appetite for alternatives. And we've had a bunch of technological shift, which has given us the phones in our pockets, has given us the access and the tech to explore these alternatives. So what that means is we've got a load of things in the world right now which are ways to do stuff with your money, but which are not banks. And with that comes, I think, a new set of challenges. Design challenges, product challenges, which are different when you're designing something that's not a bank compared to if you're designing something that recognizably is a bank. So before I go on with this, quick poll. Who in this room would identify themselves as working for a traditional bank? Cool. I just wanted to know how many people I'm going to piss off and which fire exit I should run for. Turns out there is only one fire exit, so that's that problem solved. All right, so what I'd like to do is talk about some of these challenges, which I think are quite new and different from traditional banks, in the hope that some of the experiences that I've had at TransferWise and that we have at TransferWise might help you guys out with some of the things that you're working on. So the first thing I want to talk about is the hardest and most important challenge that we have, and that is gaining people's trust. So despite everything that's happened in the last 10 years, we still trust traditional banks, or we must do because we all still use them. Switching from one bank to another is still quite a rare thing, never mind abandoning a bank altogether and doing something else completely. So we must trust them. And I suspect that trust comes because traditional banks are part of established society. So they inherit an implicit trust, which newcomers don't get. I haven't met many people that wonder out loud how their bank works. It just works. You don't really question that stuff. But the single biggest reason why people that come to our homepage don't move forward is because they don't trust us. And the reason why they don't trust us is because they don't understand what to expect. So when we find nice, engaging ways of giving them a taste of what they can expect, they seem to feel more comfortable. We know this because conversion goes up. So we assume that we've built enough trust for them to put a bunch of their money into a strange website. But then they get into the product, and the doubts may return, the worry may come back. So we get to this thing. So the biggest single reason why new customers call customer support at TransferWise is with a very simple question. The simple question is, where's my money? It's a massive proportion of the customer support contacts that we used to get. Where's my money? Now, when you make a transfer with your bank, they don't send you notifications at every step of the way. You just assume the money's going to get there, right? Because it's a bank, so they must do it right. Whereas when people use TransferWise, we take great care. That is unreadable, isn't it? How is that? Well, brilliant. Okay, you have to trust me. It's telling you where your money is. So we take a lot of care, we go to a lot of effort to very clearly explain what's happening at every step of the way. And we do that, of course, with push notifications and emails and so on. And so this is the latest incarnation of the money tracker. This one's fictional, mostly because no one's ever sent me $1,000. But what we found is that it seems to be working because those calls, those where's my money calls, have reduced considerably. So really clearly giving people a sense of what's going on all through the process has helped to establish trust. That way? Which way are we going? Oh, it's that thing again. Cool. Okay. So still on the subject of trust, we make some pretty bold claims about price on our website. But we also know that people don't trust us enough to just take our word for it. No one's going to be like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. So they compare. So what we do is we make it really easy for people to do what they're going to do anyway, which is fact check us. And so we make it easy to compare. And sometimes it turns out that we're not the cheapest at some point, one day, the next day, at some point. And so rather than covering that up and commenting that bit of the data out, we have, you absolutely cannot read this. I was going to ask, who can read this? Oh, wow, laser pointer. There's some text at the bottom that says, we're always honest with our customers, and honestly, you'd be better off using another provider this time. So we actually send people to Western Union sometimes. And that's very important because absolute honesty and absolute transparency is a founding principle of the company, and it's a key component to us building trust and trustworthiness, and with that comes a certain degree of passion and engagement, which segues nicely into the next cluster of problems. You can luckily read that, that's good. Cool. So, the next set of problems is about how we find new customers. I'm not an expert, most of you probably know better than I do, about how traditional banks get new customers. I think Ben said something quite nice earlier about financial products being sold, not bought. My observation is that there's big marketing campaigns targeted at these key trigger moments in our lives, when we go to university and need a loan, when we get married and need a loan, when we buy a house and need a loan, when we have a kid and need a loan, and when we retire and hopefully don't need a loan, but maybe need a loan. So we don't grow that way. We grow through word of mouth. So 2 out of 3 new customers who use us are using us because a friend or a family member told them about us, which is great because we don't need to spend huge amounts of money on big advertising campaigns, and so we can pass that saving on to customers by making their transfers cheaper. But people don't just go telling their beloved friends and family about stuff that they're not really passionate about, particularly not financial products, which hopefully we can all be honest enough in this room are often not that glamorous. So our job is to generate that kind of passion, that kind of engagement that would have people tell their friends and family about us and have their friends and family give it a try. Here's one of our big expensive marketing campaigns. That's lie number 1. Great. Luckily, it wasn't that expensive, and we don't do this that often. So what I'm going to talk about with this getting new customers, creating passion to drive word of mouth, I'm going to talk about a few things. The first thing that we do, or one of the things that we do, is we take the customer's side. And it's not just sort of empty marketing speak and hot air, because many of the people that work at TransferWise have had that moment. I've had that moment. Our founders founded the company because they had that moment. And so there's like an ingrained commitment in the company to help customers have that moment and then have them explain that on to their friends. So it's like it's part of our founding DNA that we're trying to kind of enlighten. And that really helps because it gets into the product, it gets into everything we do. So we take the customer side. That's thing number one in creating passion. We remind people why they use TransferWise at key moments in the experience. I don't know if people are hopefully familiar with this concept of the peak end bias. So in TransferWise, the peak of the experience is overcoming the fear of trusting a strange website with a load of your money. And the end experience is realizing why you did that. It's way faster and it's way cheaper. And so we pick these key moments in the experience and we reinforce the wisdom of your choice, and that then makes people go, damn, I'm smart. I'm going to tell so-and-so about that, and they're going to do that, and that's very powerful. What are we doing? We're helping people be passionate. That's true. So we give them stories. We help our customers to explain the problem to their friends. We give them the tools to explain. So we chose to build a business out by shining a light on the FX industry's profit model. And it turns out that the FX industry's profit model is really, really complex, and you have to be a massive nerd to get excited about it. So my dad still believes that it costs him £9 to send money to my sister in Canada, when in fact it costs him nearly 40. This stuff is hard to understand. And so what we need to do is we need to find visual, sensorial ways to explain the problem, and then give those as stories to our customers so they can show their friends. For example, the one about running across Lego bricks. So we talked about trust. That's a set of challenges, building trust when you're not part of the establishment. We talked about growing through word of mouth, driven by passion, and how to foster that passion. Now we're going to talk about the world. So banks, traditional banks, even if they're owned by a massive multinational corporation, which most of them are very much national affairs, as are the regulations that run them. So you go to America, you get a Wells Fargo account. You're in London, you go to NatWest. In France, you go to, someone help me out here, a French bank. So TransferWise, the nature of our business is helping people send money across borders and send money around the world. And so, of course, we have to be everywhere. We have to be around the world. But the nasty bit of this is that it's not a globally scalable product. So to tie this back to why we're all sitting here, to get the kind of scales that we need to get as newcomers to the market and to run value-driven businesses, we need to be international. But to go international is an extremely arduous affair. Now, unfortunately, I don't have secrets and tricks for doing this. It's just really hard work. What I can do is explain a little bit about how we chunk up the problem of building a global product. So the challenge falls into 3 buckets, which is neat because pretty much everything else in my life seems to fall into 3 buckets. The law, the plumbing, and the trust culture. So when we slice up the problem into those 3 buckets and we look at it, that helps us figure out what we need to do in each country that we open up in. So let's talk about the law first. I wish I had a nice slide for this, but the law is not a very visual thing, so we'll just keep looking at that. Or look at me. Law is mostly around proving people are who they say you are, who they say they are. Know your customer. Everyone's down with that. But it's different in different countries. So, for example, in the UK, you can do a bunch of stuff without even showing your ID. And at some point, you'll hit a threshold, and then you have to show ID. And later on, you'll hit another threshold, and then you have to dig out that non-existent piece of paper that has your address on it, usually at times when it's impossible to get that piece of paper with your address on it, but that's another thing. But the UK is quite easy, and the EU is relatively easy. It's not humane, but it's not impossible. But it gets really wild when you go to other countries. So in Japan, to prove your address, you have to have a real person turn up to your house. So we have to get a physical letter and get a courier, like a UPS guy, to go over and get a signature. And that proves that you live in that address because you signed for a letter. So that's fun. In Colombia, you have to print a form. And this is not even for the person sending the money. This is the person receiving the money. You have to print a form, and then you have to put your fingerprints on that form. I don't know if anyone here has a home fingerprinting kit. I don't. But proving you are who you say you are is very different in different places. And so the experience when you sign up to TransferWise and you want to make a transfer obviously needs to adapt to that and scale to that. What we do there, other than trying to make systems, UI systems which scale and are modular and flexible so we can drop in the right questions at the right time with the very beautifully named mitigator service, but that's another story. We try to persuade governments to help their constituents out and make their life easier. So in Singapore, people used to have to come to our office. We opened an office in a business center, and people would make appointments and come around and see Jack. And Jack was very nice and signed them up, but it was, a pretty not scalable thing. But we managed to persuade the Singapore government that selfie ID was a thing and that they could trust it. And so they changed the law. We helped them change the law. And now selfie ID is a thing in Singapore, so people don't have to come to the office, which is great, although we miss hanging out with customers a little bit. So law. Second one, plumbing. This is really difficult. What I mean by plumbing is the way that we integrate with the banking system in every country is different. So that means different payment options, different banking integrations, all of these things, different pricing structures even. And as designers, the way we try to handle that is by designing components, bits of the UI, in a way that they scale and flex. And sometimes we succeed, and sometimes it ends up looking like that. This is what happens if you're brave enough to send from Brazil. I can't really explain what all of these things in that price breakout are even. I don't know what IOF is, but I think it's a kind of tax. But you see the issue when you build a thing that looks great for the UK or looks great for Germany, as we'll see in a second. It may not look that great if you're sending from Brazil to Nigeria or from China to, actually, yeah, a different story. Let's not get into that. So that was, what did we talk about? We talked about the law, we talked about the plumbing. The last bit of this going global thing is about trust culture. So this now nicely takes us full circle. So different countries approach risk and these kind of new things in a different way. In the UK, we could tell the story of that moment story, and we could build on the UK's cultural distrust of the elite. But that doesn't work everywhere. So in Germany, a lot of people actually really like their bank manager. That's a thing. So it was quite difficult for us to figure out how to explain the TransferWise value proposition in Germany, but it was very difficult for us to figure out how to gain people's trust until we discovered the TUV logo, which is beautiful. But it's so simple and so effective. You put that thing on there, and I think conversion went up something like 20%. So like very, very small things, just understanding what are the triggers in your business and then understanding what are the enablers to those things is super powerful. So these not bank things that we build often used in combination. So it's not just a one-stop shop, everything from the NatWest anymore. Now we've got a little investment here and a money transfer there and maybe a prepaid travel card and so on. All of these things come together. A bunch of new design challenges, new product challenges. We talked through earning trust, we talked through inspiring advocates, and we talked through scaling globally. There's a load more. I'm very interested to hear other people's experiences and other people's challenges. It is really hard, whether you are one of the brave people that put up their hand and you're designing a more traditional banking experience, or whether you're designing one of these new things. Designing a product and building a product that people love and love to tell their friends about is incredibly difficult. The key to it, and this is now becoming cliche even today because I think pretty much everyone's hammered on it, is around being customer focused. Problem is that being customer focused is kind of one of those things that you say. It's like, yeah, of course we're customer focused. I don't think anyone here works for a company that wouldn't say that they're customer focused. I am lucky because I get to work in a company that puts the customer solely at the front, because we have this deep philosophy that if we make people happy and we create value for them, they will pay us for that, and we will grow as a business. So it's like decent work for decent pay kind of approach to product development. But not every company sees it that way. So for me, I think my mum put it the best when she used to tell us, do as you would be done by, which is a slightly pious way of saying treat others as you would like to be treated yourself. I have left time for questions, so if you would like to give feedback or comment or just ask where your money is, then we have 5-6 minutes. So I don't think there's a mic, but you can yell out if you want. Or we could just go for lunch in the park, or there, sorry. What have I forgotten? What did I miss? Tumbleweed. You've been a beautiful audience. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Duncan. Brilliant. I've got the news you've all been waiting for.